This is Flashpoint, and I'm Cherri Gregg. The newsmaker of the week is COVID-19 and prisons. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Correction website, 1,100 inmates and more than 170 staff members are infected with COVID-19. 86 have died. The Pennsylvania Institutional Law Project produced an animated film on the issue. The organization's director, Ming Yeh, joins us alongside Chester Hollman III, who was exonerated after 28 years in prison. Welcome to Flashpoint.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Ming, I want to start with you. The Institutional Law Project produced this video. Tell us about it and why was it important to do it?
Very early on when the pandemic hit, we were immediately concerned about the health and safe being of our incarcerated clients. We knew that there was not a lot of information out there, and we started getting reports of very serious issues, people not having access to basic things like soap, cleaning supplies, face masks, the inability to social distance, or the flip side of the social distancing, prisons taking the extreme stance of using severe lockdowns in an effort to control COVID-19 spread. So we are very concerned both about the health of the people in prison, especially those who are medically vulnerable. We are also very concerned about humane conditions. We started getting reports of people living in solitary confinement, not getting access to regular medical care, not having religious accommodations or being able to talk to loved ones. In addition, we also, especially early on, people just did not have information about COVID-19 and what prisons should be doing. So we received a small grant, and many thanks to the Pennsylvania Legal Aid Network, and we decided to come up with this idea of making a film, both to educate, hopefully, people who are incarcerated via their families, let the families and community know. And as the project evolved, we also felt it incredibly important to highlight the voices of those who are inside. So one piece of the film that I'm very proud of and really appreciate those who spoke to us are the interviews with people who are incarcerated, telling us about their experiences living in prison during COVID-19.
Yeah, and if you could just summarize some of what you heard, Ming, from these individuals.
People were very scared, anxious. The lockdown conditions made it feel like they're living in a chicken coop. They had a lot of fear about dying, not having information, in part past experiences with medical care or the lack of medical care, and then what that would mean in the pandemic. Overall, there was a lot of anxiety, fear, worry. One of the individuals that we interviewed caught COVID-19, and he talked about how difficult and painful it was having COVID-19 in prison.
Yeah, that has to be scary. And Chester, I want to bring you into this conversation because you spent 28 years behind bars for a crime you didn't commit. Tell us a little bit about your case.
Yeah, I was arrested in 1991 for a murder. I was charged with conspiracy, robbery, possession of instrument of crime. It took almost 2 years to go to trial. We went to trial in I think it was March of 93 or April of 93. I was convicted in May of 93, and I was sentenced to life in prison with a 5 to 10 year sentence and a 1 to 2 year sentence running consecutively. During that time, we had the best lawyers in Philadelphia. We proved our case, I thought beyond a reasonable doubt, but we just couldn't combat the lies. And it was very difficult to overcome. And like I said, it took 28 years. I mean, we argued all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. At each turn, it was just a denial after denial. And, during that time, I just tried to hold on to hope, believing that things eventually work out. They did, but it took almost close to 30 years. But, here we are. Since coming home, I've been able to gain employment with the Institutional Law Project. Just been a blessing, I guess, in disguise, so to speak. All that time, I didn't think I was going to make it home. I didn't think I was going to get out. As a young man, and I watched myself get older and family members, passing away and so forth. So it was a challenge, to say the least. And since coming into the Institutional Law Project, it allows me to kind of reach back to a lot of the guys that I left. Back in the early 2000s, I actually reached out to the Pennsylvania Institutional Law Project seeking help. And I received information that I was requesting at that time. So to find myself there now working, it's kind of surreal. And, to be able to help the guys that I know are writing, looking for the information that I was looking for, whether it be about, helping themselves or assisting their attorneys, in their fights for freedom.
Yeah.
Well,
So what was it like narrating this? You were released before COVID-19 struck the prisons, but what is it like for people who are trapped in there? And can you even imagine what it's like?
I thank God every day. I was released, I think 6.5 months before COVID was announced and so forth, and all that came into play. When Su Ming asked me to narrate, like I said, it was a no-brainer. First of all, Su Ming is the director of the Institutional Law Project. Is a wonderful person, and she's very passionate about this work. So, we talked about it, and knowing the conditions within the prisons, medical in prison is it's enough to keep you alive, so to speak. You know what I mean? No matter what your issues are, you start off with Motrin, and then it's up to you to keep going back and being persistent about your ailments, trying to, seek out treatment. Once you reach a certain point, then they start to address the actual issue opposed to just giving you the Motrin. With this pandemic now, I talk to a lot of guys that are still there. It's a lot of fear there because they don't receive the information outside of looking at the news, or watching CNN. So that's where they pretty much gain their information from.
And I wanted to both of you to address this idea of solitary confinement, because I don't think people understand that one of the containment methods was to keep people locked in their cells 23 hours a day. Chester, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that during your 28 years when you were in prison, but what is that like for someone being unable to move around and being locked up so long?
We are getting continual reports of people being in lockdown conditions, which is just a code word for solitary confinement. We are now 10 months in. So at first we thought maybe a week, 2 weeks, possibly that could make sense. But now 10 months, when people are in their cells 23 plus hours a day, sometimes not even getting out for a few days, that is highly problematic. It absolutely endangers people's physical and mental health. So I still have people calling me, clients calling me, and I remember someone saying, I never had mental health issues before, and he was lucky to get a call out first. But then he said, I've never had mental health issues, but really being in this cell almost 24 hours a day, I've thought about doing something. That just had me extremely concerned. We know that roughly 25% of people have serious mental illness in prison. Yeah. And these conditions are only going to exacerbate whatever challenges they have already.
And I think about that, Chester, because folks are always like, well, they did something, so they're in prison, they deserve it. Whatever happens. They should have thought about that before they got locked up. Chester, you didn't do anything.
Right.
Respond to that.
And I understand that mindset, with in regards to the punishment for the crimes that, people have committed. The institution that I was at was a minimum security institution where a lot of guys were pretty much getting out within 5 years. So, these guys are coming back out to society. I believe that, not everyone in prison is guilty. There's a lot of guys in there that are falsely accused, or the crime doesn't always necessarily fit the sentence that these guys receive. Speaking for myself, to be there and subjected to that for like almost more than half my life, it's difficult, like I said, and you don't know who's who. A lot of guys claim to be innocent, and it's not necessarily always the case, but in some cases that is true. And these guys are subjected to the same things that guys that are guilty are.
And it disproportionately impacts Black and brown people too, because we have systems in place that are racist. We got to just say that. And so you've got people put in here. I've talked to a guy who was a family of a guy who was supposed to get out in like 6 months when the pandemic started, got COVID-19 and died. Right. I mean, he was supposed to be out in 6 months, and now it was a death sentence because the pandemic hit.
And on top of that, one of the basic founding principles of our country is the United States Constitution. Yeah. And in that, it envisions a prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. So no matter what you believe in terms of whether people or not deserve punishment, we as a society have already decided and determined that people are entitled to humane treatment, because the reality is they've already lost their freedom. That itself is a tremendous punishment and a tremendous consequence. Yeah. Therefore, it's important that we as a civilized society believe in humane treatment even while you are incarcerated. So you do absolutely, under the United States Constitution, have the right to be safe from violence, to have access to medical care, and to be humanely treated had to have safe and sanitary conditions of confinement.
Yeah. It's like, you could take my freedom, but you don't have the right to take my life, even in a pandemic. And so, Chester, you settled a claim against the city of Philadelphia for a record amount, $9.8 million. Is that enough for the injustice? Could it ever be enough?
For me personally, I mean, people hear that amount and they think, well, he's been compensated. But like I said, you can't get back those years. As far as me having a family, a career, I mean, it was taken away. And so now I'm trying to rebuild. And like I said, this settlement, it doesn't erase what's been done. In this process, I lost my mother, my grandparents, my nephew, and, that was time spent with them. And, I can never get that back. So this settlement for me is, like I said, it's just an opportunity for me to help my family going forward, for all the sacrifices they made throughout the years, for me to, survive in there, so to speak. But I guess the biggest takeaway for me is the case it's settled, it's done, it's over with, it's behind me now. It allows me to move forward.
Yeah, and build a new life. You still got a lot of life to live. And so I wish you luck on that. And so as we wrap up, Su Ming, where can people find this video? And what do you want people to take away from this?
The video is available on YouTube. You can watch it. It's under 15 minutes. So hopefully, and we hope that it'll give people a better sense and understanding of what it is like to be incarcerated during COVID-19. And we hope that it'll inspire you to take further action, whether it be follow us on social media, educate yourself, advocate on behalf of people who are incarcerated, support the Pennsylvania Institutional Law Project in however way, whether it's through your efforts, advocacy, or financially. Overall, we hope that people learn more about the issue and take whatever actions that can be done to improve the lives of those who are incarcerated.
Say thank you so much to Ming Yeh and to Chester Hollman III for coming on Flashpoint and talking about this very important issue in the news.
Thank you so much for having us.